This video is brought to you by Driver61. Driver61 now has a motorsports store, so if you're looking to buy a new racing helmet, overalls or more, head over to driver61.com/shop for some great deals. Hi, I'm Scott Mansell and welcome to Driver61's University series. In this tutorial we're taking a look at how to best warm your tyres before a race, track or test session. So without further ado, let's take a look at some onboard footage. So here we are sat on board with one of my clients, Richard Baxter, and he's just preparing for a race at Rockingham Circuit. So we're sat in the collecting area, as many of you will be just before your racing, and he's going to move on to the grid and then move off on the green flag lap before the race. Now, obviously, we also need to warm our tyres in various different other various scenarios, such as qualifying, such as testing, and it's important that we build the temperature in the tyres in the same way that we will do before a race. So why do we actually need to warm our tyres? Well, racing tyres, especially slicks, work much better and give you more grip, obviously, when they have temperature in them. Now, this temperature range will vary from various different tyre compounds and manufacturers, and obviously if you have treaded tyres, you won't need to get them quite as warm as if you have slicks. Now, some tyres will only take a few corners to get warm, especially treaded tyres, and some tyres, such as the ones on this Radical, are very hard and actually take many laps to come up to temperature. Now, there's many things to take into consideration when you're getting your tyres warm: the track temperature, the air temperature, and obviously whether or not you've used tyre blankets or a tyre oven with your tyres. In which case, if the tyres are already preheated, you'll just need to go out on them on the circuit and go as quickly as you can straight away to try and keep the temperature in the tyre. But for this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the Radical tyre, which is a Dunlop and quite hard to get warm. And so it's a great example to see how much effort it is to try and get the tyres up to temperature. So as I said, here we are on board with Richard in his SR3. We're sat in collection at Rockingham. There's a short route around to getting onto the grid, but especially in this car, we need to take every opportunity that we can to get the tyres up to temperature. So firstly, let me say that in my experience, the process of getting your tyres up to temperature, the safest thing to do, and the thing that I advise all of my drivers to do, is to get the rear tyres up to temperature first. Now, the reason for this is if you're heading out on the circuit and both the front and the rear of the car, both the front and rear tyres are cold, then it's very easy to get a lot of oversteer when you're getting on the throttle or turning. And when the tyres are cold, this oversteer happens very quickly, and sometimes it's very difficult to catch. You can see some drivers spinning off on the circuit when they're trying to warm their tyres, and it's very difficult. So for this reason, the first piece of advice is to get the rear tyres warm before you get the front tyres warm. This way, when you do begin to turn and start moving across the circuit to get the tyres warm, actually you're more likely to understeer than you are oversteer, so it gives you a bit of safety, it gives you a bit of safety margin there. So as you can see, Richard's just coming out down the pit lane here at Rockingham, which is what they do when they take you from collection to the grid. And here, as I always tell him, as soon as you get the car in a straight line, even though we're going to be sat on the grid for 30 seconds or so, we need to get the rear tyres warm before the front. So he's going to accelerate, brake, accelerate and brake. And the idea is to put some energy through the rear tyres to get them up to temperature first. So you'll see here, he's on the accelerator, he's on the brake now, he's on the accelerator again, and he's on the brake again, and is on the accelerator and brake. Now he did run out of space there a little bit, but what I'd advise you is to put some energy through the rear tyres. Yes, you can spin them up a little bit, but we don't want to damage them too much. So yes, spin them up a little bit if it's safe to do so. Otherwise, just put some energy through there, and what you'll actually do is give the rear tyres more grip before you give the front tyres grip. So now Rich is heading out onto the grid. Here he's beginning to accelerate just a little bit, but obviously he's being just a bit careful because of the wall on the right hand side, but he's again going to accelerate hard here. You can see the throttle trace just down here on the left hand side, and he's hard on the accelerator, putting that energy through the rear tyres and getting them up to temperature before the fronts. Now Now he's started to move the car across the track. Now that he's confident that he's got a little bit of temperature in the rears, he's going to begin turning the car across the track. Just needs to be a little bit careful of that marshal in the middle of the track there. But he's beginning to get some temperature through the front tyres as well. So we're sat here, the front have got a little bit of temperature in them, the rears have got a little bit more, and we're just waiting now for the green flag. So here's Richard sat on the grid in his position, ready for the green flag lap before the start of the race. Now, again, he's got another opportunity as he's static, as he's standing still, to do another quick start, put some energy through those rear tyres. Now, as we're going to talk about in a future tutorial on how to get a good standing start, it's a great opportunity here to actually practice your start, just to do a practice so you can see how much grip there is on the circuit, how much revs you might need. But the idea really is to give yourself a reference, so you can see whether you need to give it a little bit more throttle or maybe slip the clutch a little bit more so that you get the best standing start possible. But in terms of tyre warming, it's a great opportunity because we just want to put that little bit more temperature in those rear tyres before we really start working in the fronts as we're going through the green flag lap. So as you can see, the green flag is waving up there on the tower on the right hand side. Richard again gives it a reasonable amount of throttle, and you can see he's accelerating hard away now, and he's gone straight for quite a while there, so that he's put all of that energy, I think he got up to second or third gear there, put all that energy through the rear tyres again, put some more heat into them as he's been sat there for 30 seconds or a minute, and again now he can be confident that the rear is going to have more grip than the front, so it's only going to understeer if the car slides, which is obviously quite important here at Rockingham because we've got that big white concrete wall on the outside. So now what you can see is Richard is weaving. It's quite difficult in this part of the circuit because it's got a lot of camber in there. It's a bank turn there at Rockingham, so he's weaving up and down but just being a bit careful. Now we're coming down onto the flat, and the idea, what you're trying to do with the steering wheel here is put enough energy through the tyres without sliding too much. If you begin to slide too much, you're literally pushing the tyre across the top of the track, and you could cause the tyre some damage and some graining, where you'll get a lot of temperature in the surface of the tyre but not much else in the core of the tyre. And of course, something else that Richard will be doing on this lap, as you can see down at the bottom of the screen again, if you just watch it just down here, he'll be accelerating and then braking and accelerating and braking. And it would be ideal if you could keep the brakes on for just a little bit longer. If you're watching the brake and throttle trace down there at the bottom, it would be ideal if you could keep the brake on for a little bit longer. And the reason is that we're trying to get some temperature through the caliper, through the brake disc, that will then transfer itself through the wheel and into the core of the tyre. We're trying to get the inside of the tyre, the core of the materials hot, so then we've got a nice temperature that runs all the way through the tyre. So now again, Richard is extending those corners. Now it's quite important. As you saw, he came out of turn 2 here at Rockingham, and he kept the steering lock in the car to move it all the way to the left hand side of the track and move it back up again all the way over to the left, so that he's keeping the corner going for an extended period of time and pushing all of the force through the outside tyres there, which is obviously what we're trying to do as much as we can. On a few of the corners, you'll probably want to drop back from the car ahead and go through there almost at the racing speed. Now, this is something, again, that we'll talk about in a future tutorial, where we'll talk about making the most out of your green flag lap. But it's important that when you're on your green flag lap, you try and gauge, especially towards the end of the lap, you try and gauge how much grip you've got in the tyres before the race starts. Now, with these radical tyres that take 2 or 3 laps to get up to temperature, it's a really important piece of information, because you need to know and you need to be able to go into that first corner and have full confidence of how much grip the tyres are actually going to give you. Once you've gone around the first few corners of the race, you'll actually have a much better understanding. But towards the end of the green flag light, it's important to drop back just a little bit, go through some of the slower corners almost at the pace that you would do in the race, just to see how much grip there is, obviously without going off the circuit. So again, just through turn 3 there, you can see that Richard actually extended the corner. So he comes through, keeps the power on, and he just keeps the car over to the right hand side, so he's putting the energy through the tyres for as long as he possibly can, just eking out those tiny little bit more of the corner so that he can get as much tyre temperature as possible. So again, he's on the brakes, now he's kind of testing the grip. He could drop back from the car in front, but you just saw there that he's coming through here, he's coming through turn 4 at Rockingham, and he's getting up to pace. Look, you can see that the car just oversteers in this area here. You can see the opposite lock that it's got in the steering wheel just here, and he's just testing to see how much grip there is. Now Richard's so refined with the car that he can do that. Obviously, if you're not quite sure with how much grip the car's got, then you just need to be careful of doing this, because if you do overstep the mark too much, then obviously you could have a spin, and that isn't what you want on the green flag lap. Again, so he's extending the corners, turning the car from left to right nice and smooth. He won't be causing the car to slide too much, you won't be causing it to understeer too much, because we don't want to get that graining. Again, on this green flag lap, when you are warming tyres before a race, you just need to be a little bit careful with the cars in front, because you can see how we're going left and right, almost opposites to the car in front. So we just need to be careful that you don't accelerate at the same time that the car in front brakes, which will actually mean that the acceleration towards the car in front of you is massive, could cause some issues on the green flag lap. So Richard's dropped back a little bit now, which is great. Turning left to right, using all the road. We don't want small turns left to right. You need to load the outside tyres up for a long time, which means that you need to have long sweeping turns across the track. Now he's accelerating hard, braking hard for a good period of time, accelerating hard and braking hard. You can see that he's putting the temperature through the brakes, through the calipers and into the wheel. And again, he's doing it again. Hopefully he'll give the throttle a bit of a kick through here as we come out, just to get some temperature in those rears. Yep, absolutely. He's accelerating hard, putting as much temperature through those rears as he possibly can. And then, just before we get to the end of the lap here at Rockingham, he's going to try and get some heat in the front tyres again, which is important before the start of the race. He's working hard here to get in the fronts up to temperature. Again, working the brakes, working the throttle. It's all about managing the tyres. You're actually working physically. You're actually working quite hard, because you're turning left, right, left, braking, accelerating. It's quite hard work when you're in the car. Accelerating hard then again, and now the grid will begin to form. So things tend to slow down. Some of these cars here have come to a stop, which is a little unusual, but things tend to slow down. You can see the car in front there, to try and get some heat in the tyres. He's done a bit of a burnout there. Now you can do that. You can just see the car on the left. There you go, just as a bit of a burnout to get some heat in the rears. Now of course we want that slight balance of grip to be towards the rear of the car, so that we've got some nice safe understeer that will then slowly reduce, hopefully, during the race. But also, if you're doing a burnout just before the grid, then it will give the rear tyres the temperature that they need, and hopefully improve your start, because the rears will have the temperature that they want. Now, I did mention doing the practice start at the green flag lap, and we'll go into this in more detail in a future tutorial. But the one thing that you do have to bear in mind is that you came onto the grid the first time for the green flag lap and had cold tyres, so it's more likely that the rears will spin up. You'll get some wheel spin when you move away on the green flag lap than when you begin the race, actually, because the tyres will have so much more temperature in them. So you will have to give the engine a few more revs or slip the clutch a little bit more. So Richard's accelerating, braking, accelerating hard here. There you go, you can see he's accelerating hard just to get that energy through the rear tyres just before the start of the race and getting on the brakes. Now it's about time just to be a little bit careful, get himself into the grid position and get ready for the start. The main points here is that it's a process. Tyre warming is a process. Yes, you need to have feel with the car. Yes, you need to have confidence about just having it on the edge, even when it might not have that much grip. But once you become used to that, it's a process. Now, the first thing, as I mentioned, is to get some temperature in the rear tyres. This will give the rear some more grip. And then when you do begin to weave across the track, it will mean that the car is much more likely just to understeer, not oversteer, which is not exactly what we want. Then it's a case of managing the brake temperature, building up the temperature across all 4 tyres, but slightly more towards the rear, so you're just going to have that slight understeer, perhaps at the start of the race, just so you can be that little bit safe. And yeah, that's all we need to do. Obviously, as I mentioned, with treaded tyres, you won't need to take as long to warm up your tyres. However, it can still be important. Thanks for watching this tutorial by Driver61. Don't miss out on any future tutorials by subscribing to our YouTube channel and our newsletter below. If you'd like to help support us, check out the driver61.com store the next time you need to make a motorsport purchase. If you'd like to learn more, please head over to driver61.com/uni for more tutorials like this one. Thank you again for watching, and goodbye.